family. His family owns the New York Football Giants. His dad's nickname is On the Football. The son of the Duke, John Mara, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. My condolences on the passing of Frank Gifford to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rich. Yeah, it was a sad, sad day for all of us here.
So what's your first memory of Frank Gifford?
You know, for me, it was I was probably 5 or 6 years old, just going to our training camp and meeting him for the first time, and he was a larger-than-life figure for me and somebody that I idolized right away. And like many kids who grew up in my generation, I mean, we all wanted to be either Mickey Mantle or Frank Gifford. And just seeing him run onto the field at Yankee Stadium in that blue number 16 was an image that I'll always have etched in my mind. You know, he was a great player for us, a great ambassador for us, and a great representative of the National Football League for so many years.
You called him the ultimate giant. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think you could make the case that he was the most important player in the history of our franchise. I mean, he came along at a time, 1952, where the NFL was really struggling as a league to attract the fans and gain recognition, and you know, all of a sudden we have a tremendous string of successful seasons in the late 1950s, and he was the star of that team, the most recognizable player on that team, the matinee idol, the player that everybody idolized and wanted to be like. And you know, we rose to prominence, as did professional football during that period in the late 50s and early 60s. And all of a sudden, our team is selling out every Sunday, something that has continued to this day. And a lot of that is attributable to the players like Frank Gifford that came along during that era.
I'm on the phone with Giants owner John Mara here on the Rich Eisen Show. Your father and Frank Gifford were inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame 20 years apart, 77 for Gifford, 97 for your dad, and they presented each other. What was their relationship like?
It was a father-son relationship almost right from the beginning. I mean, my father scouted and drafted Frank in 1952, and they immediately developed a close bond that lasted for the rest of their lives. And you know, he was always at the family functions. He rode to our home games with my mother and sisters every Sunday, and was always around. But they had a special relationship, both in good times and in bad. And he was always there for my father, and vice versa. And it was a special bond, unlike you know, with any other player and owner that I've seen anyway. The two of them were very close. And as I said, I think it was as close to a father-son relationship as anything.
If Frank had the chance to see your dad last night, which we assume he did, what do you think that conversation was like, John?
You know, I think they would have embraced and talked about old times and told each other how much they care for one another, because that was something that they did in life, and I'm sure that's going to continue up there as well. It was just it was a very special relationship that he had with my dad and with our entire family.
Now, it's because we all take for granted now that players are on TV selling stuff and being in front of the camera. My gosh, it seemed half your team was selling $5 footlongs over the last 10 years, John. But it was Frank the first one to do that in the NFL? Do you think?
I don't know if he was actually the first, but he was the first one that people remember. He's certainly the first one that I remember. I mean, he was doing it while he was a player, and you know, he moved right into it when his playing career ended. And you know, we'd do the sports on the news on Channel 2, CBS. And then he was in the CBS broadcast booth for games. I mean, he did it at a very early age, and I think he really set the trend for other players to move into broadcasting. And, you know, he did it with such ease and grace. He really set quite a high standard for it. But he's the first one that most of us remember doing that.
Yeah, and then he and Summerall are really the best ever going from playing to a play-by-play position. Normally, the players obviously are the analysts. I don't think we're going to ever see another group like that again, John, if you think about it.
I think you're probably right about that. He had a unique skill, Frank. He could do the play-by-play as well as anybody, and he could be an analyst as well as anybody and conduct interviews. And just look at the events he covered around the world. I mean, from Olympics to alpine skiing to swimming and diving. I mean, he did it all, and he was a real professional.
Now, I know this happened just 24 hours ago. Are there any discussions right now about the Giants doing something in his honor for the season, John?
We're talking about that right now, but I'm sure we'll do something for him, but we haven't finalized any plans as of yet.
Okay. Before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what you're doing in Chicago, and in front of you and the membership are presentations about football returning to where I am right now, Southern California. What are you expecting to hear at this meeting in Chicago?
I think the purpose is to just get an update from the three teams that have expressed interest in moving there, and from the cities that are involved in trying to keep those teams. And it's just an effort to bring all of the owners up to date with whatever progress has been made and where everybody stands. It's more of a informational session than anything else. No vote is expected to be taken, but this is just a meeting to try to update everybody on whatever progress has been made.
Now, folks around here in Southern California say this has a different feel than in previous years, where there was a discussion that seemed like we were close to football returning to the Los Angeles area, that it feels different. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would definitely agree with that, and I've said before that I would be very surprised if there was not one team, if not two teams, playing in Los Angeles as early as next season.
And before I, again, thank you for calling in, I want to just hit you quickly on Jason Pierre-Paul. John, you were the only owner I've ever heard ever wonder how many fingers a player has. And I'm not saying this facetiously when I ask, do you know right now how many fingers Jason Pierre-Paul has, John?
No, I mean, and I wasn't trying to be flippant.
No, I know. I know, neither am I.
I was responding to a question about, whether we expected him back and when did we expect him back. And we just don't know the condition of his hand right now because our medical people have not seen it. So until we get a chance to look at him, it's hard to make any assessment about that.
So how would you characterize the team's relationship with him right now?
Oh, it's a good relationship with him. Listen, we all feel terrible for the young man. I mean, he's one of the most popular players on our team. Everybody likes Jason Pierre-Paul. He's, a pleasure to be around, and we still have a good relationship with him. But he's decided that he needs to stay down in Florida until he's ready to come up here and do some therapy. So that's his right to do that. We'd rather have him up with us, but that's the decision he's made. And
lastly, if you want to leave a thought in people's minds about Frank Gifford, what would you want people who are, there are different generations. My generation, I remember him from his initial Monday Night Football booth. My colleagues here on the set remember him in the later years of the Monday Night Football booth. You obviously know him from his playing days. How would you like to leave the thought of Frank Gifford in people's minds?
Frank Gifford was the consummate professional, the ultimate giant, but more importantly, one of the most decent men that I've ever met, and somebody that we all aspire to be like, because he conducted himself with such class and dignity throughout his life.
John, thanks for calling in. I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet. That's John Mara.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.